Funding for the National Western Complex is at issue this week as Denver leaders met with the Colorado Economic Development Commission on Monday. Denver is requesting close to $130 million to complete the project through the Regional Tourism Act. According to the Denver Business Journal, third-party analysts suggest Denver overestimated the number of visitors that the project would bring, and it only needs a max of $81 million spread out over 36 years. Patty, what would you say?
Well, I'd say this is a project that's going to have some big hurdles coming up in the next month. First of all, you have to have the vote November 3rd by the residents of Denver of whether or not we want to extend the lodging and car rental tax, not just for a while, but forever, in order to fund the National Western Center. That vote comes before the state makes its decision on whether or not it wants to put in $131 million or whatever amount it wants to put in. So it's awkward timing for the city. And speaking of awkward, the governor just set up a commission on Indian mascots, Native American mascots. He should have included mascots for 2C. What are we doing with Larimer the Longhorn? If you've seen those commercials, they are not exactly going to sway the Denver of 2015 to vote for what looks like a $720 million tax if you read the ballot measure. No one loves Denver as a cow town and its western roots more than I do, but the fact is this big multi-million-dollar complex, almost $1 billion by the time it's done, is not just for the stock show if it's going to work. It is for the neighborhood, it is for CSU. There are a lot of different parts of it, and no one is going to authorize the extension of that tax just so people can go drink in a bar, much as I salute them with some cowboys.
David, now what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is something that will eventually fly with the city of Denver?
Well, I sure hope it doesn't. Thad Texa, who is a political science professor at the University of Colorado at Denver, has been speaking out against it. There's no formal opposition, and you've got, as he points out, there's $1 million in this campaign, 200,000 of which came from a public-private partnership of the city government itself and corporate donors. And he very accurately says that if you look at how much these people like the construction companies and the various other corporate welfare queens are putting in, they are getting out a huge investment. I mean, it's the best. Spend $1 million and then you get over 80 times, even if we cut it down to what it should be, $81 million, that's a pretty huge amount of money. So a wise investment for them, but not for the taxpayers, because as he also points out, imagine instead of doing this concentrated welfare project, and cowboys traditionally have not been on welfare, so I think that would be a bad change in tradition. You took that money and you could put $70 million in projects in every single council district. Think how much good could be done. I mean, take one district, 1/11 of the city, $70 million in there to do whatever, improve the parks, a senior center, bike paths, all kinds of great things could be done that would really benefit the Denver voters, the people of Denver, rather than this narrowly concentrated benefit to special interests.
So it's something where maybe we could spread the wealth a little bit, if you will. Penn, what's your take on this?
Well, I think the proponents would tell you that's what happens, that if you invest in this project, you generate economic activity, and it benefits all of us because of the revenue going into tax coffers. But I think this is going to be an interesting issue. I think this may well be the test of whether people in Denver are paying attention. David's right, there's no formal opposition, but Patty's also right. When you look at the ballot question, the number is enough to choke on when you look at the dollars that are involved. And the fundamental issue, I think, in the minds of voters is going to have to be, why are we doing this for the National Western? Set aside whether you support the promotion of agricultural and Western culture and everything else. I think the question is, why are we doing this for an enterprise that traditionally has struggled, has not gotten support, which is why the consultant said the attendance numbers were overinflated, and have been on the brink of solvency for a while. And part of it's because it only happens during a very, very narrow 2 to 3 week period of the year, and they haven't done a good job of utilizing the asset, the venue, during the rest of the year, so they're always struggling for money. They're broke. And the question is, can you really subsidize and save an enterprise that may have fundamentally some other issues in terms of its operation? And I just don't know if Denver voters are paying close enough attention to think that far down the path. And it's easy to do that and then decide, well, this is something we ought to support because it's good for the economy. But that tends to be the reflexive answer anymore. And I don't know if it bears out in this case, particularly if even the state is questioning what level of support to give it. And by the way, David, cowboys and ranchers have gotten welfare. It's called farm subsidy support. So.
Now, Natasha, this is something that's could potentially, cost a lot of money. What's your thoughts on it, and how do you think Denver voters will sway?
I think the stock show should start a contest where people can guess what the final dollar amount is going to be, and give whoever guesses that right when it is finally completed a lifetime entrance fee into the stock show events. I think that as we're quibbling about this back and forth, and how many visitors are here or not, or will there be less? Well, I-70 is being widened or not? Like those are good questions, and we should try to get as close to the real number as possible. But I think anyone who's dealt with construction knows they come in late and they come in over budget, and this project is definitely going to do that. I do think that the question of the I-70 widening and how that will impact both the construction and the development of this site is really key, because they're kind of distanced from each other as we discuss them. We talk about I-70 separately in a silo. We talk about the stock show separately in a silo. But we're basically going to blow up the center of Denver to work on both of these projects, potentially at the same time, or it's certainly overlapping. And I don't think we've had enough discussions yet about what that means to both commuters, to travelers, to visitors, but also the long-term health of an organization we've already discussed is struggling to maintain its hold within the Denver community. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here. I think this will come up at this table again.